Welcome, everyone, to the ScreamCast. I'm your host, Sean DeRager, and with me, as always, and a little less grumpy today, Brad Henderson. What's up?
Hi.
Today, we are talking today's classic, The Howling, but we also have a special guest. So Jessica Cameron is on the show with us today. You may know her from Virginia Obscura. Just came out on Full Moon, their streaming site, in February. And then, what I just watched, The Sleeper.
Oh, that's a good one.
And then
Mr. Hush. And there's also another one. You play Jennifer, actually. What was it? It was by James. James directed it. To Jennifer.
Yes, Jennifer.
That's on Amazon.
Ironically,
Instant.
Jennifer, I probably played about 6 or 7 different characters named Jennifer. I know, right? It's like the most random thing ever.
And then also you were in, just a bit part in Stephen C. Miller's Silent Night, right?
I played the nurse in the scene that referenced the original. So because I'm a sucker for the original, it was an honor.
That's good. We'll have to get Stephen C. Miller on the show sometime.
Yes,
yeah, that might be something. He's a good guy.
We like him a lot. He runs a really tight set, and everyone loves him on a film set. So it's a pleasure to be around him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's from Florida, I believe, by the way, guys. No big deal. I actually met him when they were filming Automon Transfusion in Orlando over here. So that's where I very first met him, because a company that I was kind of working for was doing something with lights, I think. And I met him briefly, and he was a nice guy, and then he just kind of blew up. So
yeah, he's super nice. He's even nicer in person. To those of you that have commented, I get a lot of the time people saying, "Oh my gosh, he's so nice to me online." He's one of those few people that's nicer in person.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Sean, you know him personally, right? He just lives right down the street from you.
For my work, we're having coffee this week. So again,
There you go. But
yeah, super cool guy, very nice guy, family man, and horror director.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. And you don't often see it's not often publicized together. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, he uses social media a lot, so you get to see his little girl, and now his boy, Vanessa's pregnant, so that's pretty cool too.
When people seem to associate, people outside who aren't really into horror, they associate like a horror director or actors or whatever as being somewhat fucked up in the head, you know what I mean? But most of the time, everyone that I meet in the horror community is like just super nice and super down to earth.
So what about me, Sean, since I put my daughter in my first short film and I tore it to pieces? What would you say about that?
Well, knowing you're a little bit fucked up in the head.
Thank you.
Here's the thing, though. I believe that when you work in this genre especially, the people I've encountered are often those who are the most genuine and kind. And I think it has something to do with that we kind of put all of our issues on the screen, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, we're kind of open books in that regard. A lot of us, we know that we're fucked in the head. We don't try to hide it. We're not trying to pretend to be some cookie cutter American stereotype. We're just like, yeah, we're freaks, and here I am. Love me or hate me. I don't really care. Like my movie, cool. Don't. That's awesome too. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. With you, you're all over the place. You have, and of course, you have your full list of your filmography of films that you've acted in, but now of course, you just wrote, directed, and starred in your new film that doesn't have distribution yet, Truth or Dare.
Yes, Truth or Dare.
So like, you are. It's crazy to see that on just the viewers and of you diving so quickly into directing, also writing the film, and of course starring in it. How was that, by the way?
Well, I think something to be very clearly stated is that I co-wrote it, and co-wrote is really not a proper term. I basically contributed some thoughts, ideas, and kind of helped with dialogue, but Jonathan Higgins honestly did a lot more of the actual writing, and I don't know anything about proper script writing, if that makes sense. You could talk to somebody who's a screenwriter like John, and you can talk to him about how, the arcs and the flow and the pacing and the beats. And I don't really know much about any of that other than what I like on screen and what I don't. Where I came in to help was, these are the characters I had in mind. This is these are some of the torture that I wanted them to happen. This is where the story should go, and we kind of just worked it out before that. But I could not in any way, shape, or form sit down and write a script. And it's funny because I am so public. I get people that are like, oh my gosh, you're a scriptwriter. You should write this movie that I have in my mind. And I'm like, first of all, no, thank you. But secondly, you also wouldn't want me to do that. Like, it would not be good. It just would not. It would be a 90-page run-on sentence with spelling errors and major grammar issues.
Yeah. Now, was that like a big thing? Like, was there, stepping behind the camera? Like, did you have any experience, like with, growing up doing shorts, like with, like brothers or sisters or something, or anything like that? Or did you just step right into it and just say, fuck it, I'm going to direct this movie?
I just stepped right into it. I had never directed a short. I have been on over 70 sets though. And I'm a people watcher, so I love to people watch. And being on a film set, that's a really great thing because there's a lot more waiting around than doing much else as an actor. So I've learned over, many years now what works and what doesn't. So I kind of just applied that. And then a policy I have on life is admit to what you don't know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I live my life in all regards. And it's really true, I think, in filmmaking, regardless of how much experience or knowledge you have, there's always going to be stuff that you don't know. So as long as you understand that you don't know that and therefore somebody else needs to, you're fine. So I had a very honest conversation with the DP to be like, hey, look, I'm not sure of the exact definitions. I can articulate to you what I want. We can work together on the shots, but I'm not going to look to you and be like, I want a 35 lens on this. And no, I'm going to be like, here's kind of how I envision it. And you could tell me what that is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that and saying that not everybody knows everything, because some people think that's true. And it's like, you can learn shit even if you're on your fifth or sixth film that you're, directing a feature, you still don't know everything. There's something you can always learn, even if it's shortcuts or just the life lesson. Like, there's always something.
Oh, absolutely. You look at Kubrick, he sometimes did 170 some takes, and it's because it wasn't quite right. And it's not because he wasn't knowledgeable, he wasn't experienced. It's just, even if you are, it doesn't make everything run smoothly. Like, there's an endless amount that you can learn and delve into. And I just think that the trick is to be realistic, and then to find out, a film set is all about figuring out the best quality people who can do the stuff that you can't. So I don't know anything about sound other than I know what good sound is and I know what bad sound is. So I hired a good sound guy. I don't know anything about ADing, and I didn't want to have to deal with that. So we hired the best AD that we could find, and we got him a really strong second to sort of make sure that his life was easier. So we kind of worked within that mind frame of just, if I didn't know, then they would know. Other people would know, the people that we'd hired. And that's kind of their job. You hire the sound guy to monitor the sound, and you have to make sure that you trust him to do his job well anyway. So I was really lucky I didn't have to babysit anybody else on set. And I really focused a lot on the acting, which obviously is my heart, and my soul is that of an actor. So being able to work with the actors in depth on their character, and that's kind of what I put a lot of energy into. Post-production was, again, I don't know post-production. I'm aware of this fun little fact. So I had to hire a good editor, and we had to get a good sound designer and a good composer. These are all things that I just cannot do myself. I knew that it was unrealistic for me to learn how to do editing and then to edit my first feature film. So I had to bring somebody else on board to do that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, that's you dove right into it, and you were ballsy to begin with to do something like that, and you admitted what you could and could not do, and that's why it became a success, obviously, because that's how a lot of things turn sour with certain people, is that you do have people that think they know everything, don't want any help, they want to head everything, but admitting, you hear that first time filmmakers, and all filmmakers, don't act like you know everything.
No, here's the thing. The world is filled with endless amounts of information. I don't think it's possible for any one person to know everything about any one subject to begin with. I would say it's a physical impossibility. So that being said, I'm perfectly fine was saying, hey, look, I don't know that. But here's the thing. I could probably find somebody who does, or who can learn it, or who has a passion for it. I don't have a passion for editing, so let me get somebody on board who does.
Now, you did say that you were on a lot of movie sets, and there's one movie set I'm curious about is Camel Spiders, working with Warnowski. How was that?
It's everything you've ever heard.
Okay.
That's fun.
All right. Yeah, because it was just like hearing stories about him. It's just like he's such he has a documentary. I can't think of the name, but where he filmed the movie in just 3 days. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you. And he's just he's like Roger Corman in a way, and he goes out there and he knows exactly what he wants. And he's just an all around funny guy and very, very loud. So was working with him kind of a dream, or did you just kind of dive right into that? Did you know who he was prior to that, about his work ethic and how he was?
I absolutely did. I don't think you can not know who Jim Wynorski is if you're involved in the B-movie world. And I think he studied under Corman. So it's very fair that you would, could mention the fact that he's like his own Roger Corman, because I think that's his exact style. Here's the thing. Working with Jim Wynorski is just like you saw in that video. So for those of you who haven't seen Papadopoulos, it shows Jim Wynorski as a very old-fashioned, sexist, douchebag, straightforward, articulate, loud, obnoxious, could care less about you, just wants to make the movie the fastest way possible as he sees it in his mind kind of guy. And that's really how he is. So I say all those things, and I don't mean to, I'm not saying them with any level of disrespect, because I actually really like him. Yeah. So I say all those and say I really like him, but you can't help, and other people said, but you call him a douchebag. I'm like, well, but he is the definition, of.
He's a lovable asshole.
He's a lovable asshole. And that's not to say that you don't love him. It's just, that's what he is. The sky is blue, the grass is green. Jim Wynorski is a lovable asshole. That being said, I do have a lot of respect for him. He did, I think, a wonderful job. We directed 27 pages of action and dialogue in a 17-hour shoot day. Right, which is very Jim Wynorski. Yeah. It's just very, awesome. Very appropriate, right? I'm a research nut, so I research everything I can. And I'd honestly had done my research on Jim, and something that you read, if you research Jim Wynorski, at least at the time, which this is 2010, the thing that came up most prevalent is his requirement to actors, because there was a bunch of people talking about it. He talks about it often. He gets a lot of slander for it. He gets some praise from his hardcore fans. And basically what he says, if you want to be an actor in my movie, you have to be beautiful. You have to have giant breasts. If you're not a C cup or larger, he's not interested. He used to, true story, he used to make until it became illegal. So back in the 80s, he used to make all the women strip down to their G-string and bra and run around a tennis court to see what jiggled where before he would give them a role on his movies. Yeah, so
I definitely heard that. You didn't
actually have to audition, just you had to do a near naked jog. So
you have to know where to put the camera.
Right. So, but all of this is completely true. And I go up to Jim and I said, I was really surprised you cast me. And he's like, oh, why is that? I'm like, well, because I'm familiar with your work and I've researched you, and, I'm clearly not a C cup. And so I just assumed I'd never work with you. And he's like, yeah, well, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. You really do need to get a boob job. You should be at least a D cup. He's like, honestly, when you stand with your back facing me and you put your arms up, if I can't see your breasts outside of your sides, then they're not big enough. And I really feel like that's what's holding your career back. And I was like, okay then. So I was just here to thank you for having me on your set, but noted, I disagree. But yeah, thanks. Cheers. What do you say to that?
Yeah. It's just one of those things where he can totally fucking get away with it. And other people would say that they would probably get their lights punched out, but it's okay.
He's not, he wasn't, as much as I'm not saying lovable asshole with any negative connotation, he wasn't saying that with any not negative connotation. That to him was truth.
Yeah.
That's genuinely how he feels. And it's funny because like other people assume because he says stuff like that, they're like, oh, well, he probably hit on you and tried to sleep with you. And I was like, not the contrary at all. He didn't hit on me or any other woman on set. He didn't try to sleep with anyone. It's just in his mind, if you're going to be a known actor, then you have to have giant breasts. And that's more important than, arguably your actual skill at acting.
Well, yeah, he still comes from that old-fashioned thing too of back in the day, if you didn't take off your clothes in a horror film, you weren't going to make it. This kind of like underlying thing, and I think a lot of that did carry over. Which that's it's kind of that's not even at all what happens today. But he's still a little old-fashioned.
Changed,
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's exactly what you thought it would be. I couldn't believe that we went through so much dialogue and action. And for those of you who wonder, not only did we shoot 27 pages inside of one 17-hour day, which, to keep it in perspective, on a regular independent set, you'll shoot between 6 and 12 pages. On a major budget feature film set, you typically do like 3 to 5, sometimes even less. So to shoot 27 is an extreme for even the most indie film. And then on top of that, most of the actors drove anywhere between 3 and 5 hours each way because we had no hotels either night. And then we had one meal on set and no craft services. So we were tagging people out to go like run the half mile down the road to get the water and snacks and such. And we had one meal. We got to go to one little restaurant in the middle of Indiana where we could order anything off like the $5 lunch special.
That's awesome. I mean, that might sound like a nightmare to some people, but that just sounds like pure bliss, like working with him and doing, like, just getting down and gritty, dirty and stuff like that with a film with him.
It's all fun until you realize you're like, because again, he doesn't pay you hardly anything, which is fine. You know that going into it, but then you're like, okay, if I get a hotel, I've used my paycheck. So we're going to try to, after working 17 hours, driving 4 to get here, I'm going to drive 4 hours back. Probably not the safest thing, but nobody wanted to spend their hard-earned money for like one 17-hour shoot day to get a hotel.
Yeah,
that's fun.
But yeah, so it's everything you thought and more. And that being said, he only said to me once that he hated it, so I got off really easy. I was lucky. The other girl on set was a theater actor, so she took kind of the brunt of his criticisms. He's very abrupt. So he doesn't sugarcoat it, which I actually appreciate because I feel like that's one of the reasons why he can shoot so much. Because rather than being like, oh no, she's just not hitting her mark, let's run through it 10 more times, hoping that she does it differently, he'll just tell you, that was horrible. What the fuck are you doing? And then, of course, that causes any actor to give a drastically different performance. So he definitely saves a lot of time there. And I liked how he didn't really hem and haw. Like when he felt that he had it. That was it.
Yeah. No, you could probably talk. We should have a podcast just with stories about Jim.
We should.
And what shocked me is that they're all true. I expected it to all be greatly embellished or for him, like them to be exaggerated. And then you meet him, you're like, oh wow, he's like that one guy in the world that everything you've ever read is completely accurate.
Yeah, I've spoken to about 3 or 4 people that have worked with him, and they all say the same thing. But no one talks shit about him because they just, they actually legitimately like the guy. He's just, like we've said countless times, he's a lovable asshole.
Yes, he's great.
I'm looking through your filmography here because Brad was a little more aware of your work than I was because Brad watches just a shit ton of horror movies.
Nice.
And I was surprised looking through, just all the movies you've done in your relatively short career. I mean, you have, this says here you have like 53 credits right now.
Yep. And that's only the ones that are on IMDb. I did a lot of ones will either never make IMDb or, there's been several that drop off when some films die in post-production. That's just a sad truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you attribute to accomplishing like this much work in such a short amount of time? Is it, your work ethic? Is it a good agent?
Well, here's the thing. I have a rep in Ohio who anytime they're doing a movie in Ohio, they book me, they get me an audition. But outside of that, I don't have an agent. I don't have a rep. I am working with a wonderful convention manager who's great. And he's doing a really wonderful job at marketing and promoting me and really aligning myself with people that market and promote themselves as well as myself. I think combine all of that with just really trying to be as professional as I can, even when there are times when you're put into unprofessional situations and you're kind of between a rock and a hard place where there's unfortunately no greatly professional, easy way to get out of it. And you just sort of have to do your best. But then just combined with other standard professional things that I think are often, unfortunately, neglected in our industry, which is showing up on set, being happy to be there, doing whatever you can to help, marketing and promoting the movie that you're a part of that's gracious enough to bring you out and pay you to be there, helping with wardrobe if necessary, really owning the character, showing up, knowing your character, knowing the lines, and being a joy on set, which I like to think, and I've been told that I am. So I think that it's just that combination, and really trying to hustle. So I get most of the time, if I work with somebody, they bring me back on board again because I tend to be pretty easy to work with. And, I promote my movies and I try to go out of my way to make others' lives easier. But I try to do that in everything, not just my filmmaking. So it's just sort of like my policy on life. I think if you could do something to make somebody else's day better, do it.
Yeah, and you're digging into producing now as well.
Yes. And it's something that I've been producing for a while. I just always sort of didn't want to do it officially. For whatever year, like you hear, I always joke that I just wanted to be a one-trick pony. But then I realized I'm doing it already. I'm just not getting paid for it. So I might as well get paid for the work I'm doing. And I felt too like there is a need, I think, for producers who understand the marketing and promotion side of things, and how to interact and engage with the fans, which is really crucial, I think, to a film's success, especially an independently financed film where you don't have a studio backing to sort of support the marketing and promotional campaign. So that's sort of been a passion of mine, and I've gravitated towards people that are like-minded. So we try to utilize that as much as we can and sort of make as much noise. When you put your heart and soul into a movie, you want people to hear about it.
Yeah. Well, just looking at LA's movies too, I mean, I think most of them are horror movies. Did you just kind of fall into that, or has horror kind of been a passion for you, already? Like, what's your experience with the horror genre, I guess, growing up?
You know what? I was always a horror fan. Horror was my passion, for sure. That being said, I never really actively sought to seek it out. Like, when I first started doing acting, my main goal was just to get as much work as possible. I was like, I am leaving my day job, and I just want to work on good quality projects, whether it be acting, comedy, drama, whatever. I don't care. That being said, what I found being in the Midwest was that the majority of auditions that I would go out on were horror. Because you can do horror for a lower budget, you don't have to have a star name, and you can still sell it and make a profit. So I sort of found myself just going out on a ton of these independent horror auditions and really loving them. So it kind of just sort of found me. I'm really glad that it did, because growing up, horror was always my favorite movie to watch. And I find them the most entertaining, and I find as an actor that they're the most difficult to portray, because usually a horror is never just a horror movie. There are always elements of drama. There's elements of comedy typically, and many of them. There's elements of thriller. The characters have the greatest arc, because a lot of the time it's going from a normal situation to an insane, batshit crazy, unrealistic extreme, which is wonderful. And I love playing that. Versus a comedy, which is like, oh, you're at a coffee shop and your friend broke up with her boyfriend and you're consoling her and you crack jokes. I find running from zombies to be much more entertaining as an actor and as an audience member.
Yeah, I feel the same way too. My wife, she doesn't get horror at all, so we always get in these conversations, and I'm like, well, there's so many genres inside the horror genre. You never really know what you're gonna get with each film. And that's the fun of it, I think.
I completely concur.
I do too, Sean.
Okay, Brad.
Well, I always like to say that maybe you're just not showing her the right kind of horror. So maybe something that's a little bit more mainstream is the way to go. Getting her. I think it's a great time to sort of be converting the masses of those who are not horror fans, because you can get to watch an episode of Breaking Bad or The Walking Dead or any of these other shows that might not be straightforward horror, like Breaking Bad. Most people don't consider that a horror show.
Right.
And it's technically not, but it does have a lot of that vicious, graphic, violent nature. and some really horrific scenes. That, in my opinion, it's not horror, but it's definitely got some horror scenes.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, like, she loves True Blood. For someone that doesn't like horror.
There's good-looking dudes in it, Sean. That's the reason why.
I guess so. Jason Stackhouse is stacked.
I don't know who that is, but okay.
But then maybe get her to watch something else that also has some good-looking young prepubescent boys in it that she might be interested in.
She denies it, but I think that's the key. I think we've nailed it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Janice is the same way with me. Like I could hold up like Nightmare on Elm Street immediately. She just gives me the worst fucking look possible and just goes no. But then I'll like pull out some obscure thing and she's like, oh, what's that? And I'm like, oh, I give her a little bit of the detail of the plot. And for example, we spoke to Morgan Peter Brown recently and I showed her Absentia and she fucking loved it. It's just that type of thing. And I think Jessica's on the same page is that maybe don't show her the Scream Factory movies. There you go. She might not like those, but she might like more of the, the artsy fartsy horror films, I guess. Or ones with, boys with their shirts off.
Yeah, well, going on to, like, the other thing that she might like, if you're looking at True Blood, is kind of like that teenage angsty thing. So depending upon if it is solely the boys or not, but Ginger Snaps is like a horror film that sort of centers around this teenage.
There you go.
Like the Cancer, which is a Scream Factory release. So there are a bunch of other films as well that you can sort of you can negotiate your way through there. And I like to do multi-tiered attacks with these people who are not horror fans. So I'll figure out how I can get them hooked. So again, if you look at what she likes, and if you do think like the teenage angst, you could go to Ginger Snaps, and then you could go from Ginger Snaps if she liked that and was okay with that to being like, well, okay, you like the lead in that, Catherine Isabel. She was in this movie American Mary. You could go from there to that. That's a reasonable if she liked it, and you can kind of open up a ton of doors by, following the path.
Is there a combination of True Blood and Downton Abbey? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. That would scare me.
You may strike gold if you can crack that. You may strike gold.
And also to our listeners, our shows are not planned. So when they tie into one another like this, because we just had Tristan Risk on from last night from American Mary, and we just talked about that. Yeah. So just a note, this is all unscripted. It's kind of funny that it happens.
Well, here's the thing. It's a very small world. Yeah. I actually, every year I get asked to do like your top 10 horror movies of the year, which is usually tricky for me for several reasons. The first of which being I try to only pick movies that are getting released that year because it doesn't help me to like give a shout out to an independent film that's really great that I saw at a festival that's going to be released 2 years from now. It's better off that I do it 2 years from now when it's released. That being said, I counted on my, like, all the movies, all the horror films that had sort of come out, and there's usually less than 30 that are released that I've heard about that year.
Yeah.
So that's not a lot of movies when you keep it in perspective.
Yeah, I always get shit for putting stuff on my list because I do end of the year list every year, and people always get tweets and stuff like that's not out yet. And it's like, but you know what? I've been to all these fucking festivals. Like, what do you want me to do?
Well, and it's a job of itself to keep track of each and every one of them.
Yeah, but when it comes out, you're going to see me promote the shit out of it, though. Yes. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I mean, we did that with You're Next, of course, because it was fucking like 2 years later. But yeah, that made my like top, I think it was like 2011 lists. And I got shit for putting that on there.
Nice. That's such a great film.
What you need to do, Brad, is keep a spreadsheet, okay? And whatever you saw, you put that on the spreadsheet until it's released, and then, right? No, I don't know. I don't do end of year lists, so I have no idea.
Have your assistant do it. It'll be fun.
Well, my number one last year was Blue Ruin, and it comes out this month, and I highly suggested it. It's not a horror film, and usually my number one is always a horror film, but this last year it was not. Blue Ruin is one of the best films that you will probably see this year. Just saying. Unless you see Truth or Dare.
Yes, this is true. Well, and you can see Truth or Dare all over the place. We're at a ton of festivals, and we have a lot more interest. So we do want to do as many festivals as it's wanted, just sort of try to get it to the fans, because it's so much fun to watch with your friends. And really, graphic, violent, vicious torture films are the most fun to watch with your friends.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I want to get to talking The Howling here very soon. Yeah. And Jessica, I'm going to give you some time at the end of the show to kind of promote what's coming up for you. So
okay.
Just want to let you know so you don't think I'm just skipping over that.
No worries.
Brad will, throw a digital something at my face.
Yeah. Sean's all business. Sean's the business side.
I'm keeping the time going. Keeping track of the time.
But yeah, we have fun, and then he cuts us off. He's like, "Nope, we got to talk about The Howling."
I'm sorry.
Now.
Well, first we're going to go to our musical break here. Today's band is called In Heart's Wake. They're from Australia. They're an Australian metal hardcore outfit. And their second album is set to be released on May 2nd. They've just released a video for their first single off that album. So we're going to listen to that right now. This is In Heart's Wake with the song Divine on the ScreamCast. That was In Heart's Wake with the song Divine. It's off of their album Earthwalker that's out on May 2nd of this year. Their video is out on YouTube right now, and you'll be able to find that and all their info in the show notes of today's podcast.
We're going to talk about The Howling.
Joe Dante's film. He did this right after, I think it's this film he did right after Piranha. Am I correct?
Yeah, Howling was 81, right? Piranha was like 78, 79, something like that. Yeah, there might have been a film in between. I think there's a film in between there. But, The Howling was very shortly after, done after Piranha. Well, I'm thinking of Hollywood Boulevard, or Sunset Boulevard? Hollywood Boulevard.
I don't know.
Yeah, he did Hollywood Boulevard, whatever it's called, before Piranha, and then he probably did The Howling. But anyways.
What I like to do when we start talking about the movie is kind of gauge our history with this movie. And I'm going to let Jessica start, because I think we kind of chose this because you kind of suggested it. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I suggested it because it's one of those movies that I saw as a child, and I've seen it several times repeatedly. And most recently, I was just blessed to see it in Hollywood with Joe Dante and several of the other actors in attendance.
Ooh, that's
and getting
cool.
to sort of, and hear them speak on the movie and the impact it made, and how it has sort of not, how it's just sort of still maintained its status, which I think is really, really great. I think there's some brilliant practical effects. If you know anything about me, then you know that I'm a sucker for practical effects. Obviously, being an 81 film, it's filled with practical, which is fantastic. And it was just really a wonderful experience to sort of watch the movie with, I think it was Belinda was there, Joe Dante was there. He spoke the most. So it was really great.
Yeah, and Rick Baker and Rob Bottin, the guys behind the makeup and the effects, they're fucking geniuses, and they've killed it in Hollywood over and over and over again, and they definitely fucking kill it in The Howling.
Yeah. Brad, how about you? What's your experience with The Howling?
Mine's a little heartfelt. It's a kind of a sweet story. Because just about every podcast I first witnessed mostly all these films with my mother, and I said to my mom when I was younger, I don't remember saying it to her, this is what she said, is that I asked for a werewolf movie, and she was kind of a fan of The Howling. And she brought it home one night, and she put it in, and we just sat there. And, because there's not a reveal of a werewolf until 30, 45 minutes into the movie. And I didn't know what I was watching. It was just, I just remember it being very uncomfortable, watching it, because it has this it's like this glossy, misty feel the whole entire time. It feels like everybody's sweating, and you're supposed to be sweating. Because the movie jumps right into the middle of the movie, it seems, because we already have, Dee Wallace's character, Karen, I think her name was, being stalked by Eddie Quist, and this has been going on and on. So, we're just dropped into this like dramatic experience for her, and her husband is behind getting all these compliments. Oh, your wife's so brave, and we just don't know what's going on until like she ends up in the porno booth and nothing really happens. I mean, he kind of like, you could tell like he's very hairy, and it looks like he's almost about to turn in the booth. But just sitting there watching it as a child and seeing that first, whenever her friend is like in the office and she holds up the files and then the fucking werewolf hand comes in and grabs the files and pulls them up. I just remember thinking when I was little, like, holy shit, look at that thing. Like, this is like, that thing is like fucking 7 feet tall. Like, it's just, it just frightened me at that time. And, sitting there and looking at my mom, looking at me, smiling, like wanting to see my reaction of what I'm going to think when I see this big fucking monster, just, go ballistic. So that was my first experience. I was very, very young. I don't remember how old I was. But I remember sitting on the floor and my mom sitting on a chair next to me, and out of the corner, I'm on a peripheral vision, I just saw her looking at me most of the movie, wanting to see my reaction. It's a very, like, that's a time that I will always cherish with my mom, because I watched a lot of these movies with her, but that one really stands out, among others. So
that's fantastic. I mean, my stems back to the good old video store. I always bring this too. Like, you actually watched the movies like with your parents. I actually, when my parents were browsing in the video store, I would end up in the horror section, and when they weren't looking, like, start looking at all the boxes, and that the poster and the box art with the claws coming through the paper or whatever it is, the fabric, whatever, with the woman screaming, and
it's like
blood splatter. Like, that's an iconic image that's always been in my head. And when I finally, as I got older, I didn't really start watching horror movies. I think into college, I started really devouring horror movies on a regular basis. So this was one I remember renting on VHS, and then eventually I bought the DVD, and it's just been one of those that I think out of all the werewolf films that I've seen, like, there's a Silver Bullet, there's Bad Moon, what else is there?
Dog Soldiers, which is being released by Scream Factory.
Dog Soldiers, which has awesome practical werewolf effects. But I think out of all those that I've seen, I mean, obviously the original Wolfman, but the practical effects, because I am too very fond of practical effects, and that the werewolf transformation scenes are great. So those have always stuck out in my head. Just they look painful, like. It's not this smooth transition. There are these rough transitions. There's bones breaking and things adjusting, and you can just...
And the sound design sounds
fun. Incredible. And so this just is very, it just brings you right into this transformation. And that's always
and it's long,
with
too.
Me. Yeah.
Like whenever, is it Robert Picardo that plays Eddie Quist or whatever? Like when he stands there and he like digs the fucking bullet like out of his head and everything, and then he just like that. It feels like that transformation is a fucking movie in itself. Like it just keeps going and going, but it's not one that you're like, oh my god, why don't you turn? No, it's like, oh my god, like we're actually seeing this fucking long transformation that Rick Baker and Botten and the other guys that worked on that film put together, and they know it looks good. They're not trying to hide it with camera angles. They're not trying to hide anything. They're like really close up. You're seeing like the ears pop out of the fucking head. You're seeing his eyeballs twitch. The jaw extend. It's just so. I don't know if any other werewolf movie kind of compares to that transformation. Even with American Werewolf in Paris, in London. Just it actually, I said Paris first. It was kind of funny. I
was going to be a dick and just call you out
Tom
of it,
Everett. I'm a big Tom Everett Scott fan. What can I say? So no, it's just that you don't really see that, that close up that much and that gruesome in any other werewolf movie that I can think of.
Yeah. It's great.
And I like the fact I longed for a time where the monsters were scary and not sexy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of like the sparkling vampires. A werewolf to me should look like a beast. It's a monster, and this is what that film does so well, in my opinion.
Yeah, it shouldn't look like a fucking clean wolf, and that's one thing about Dog Soldiers I really like, because when those things turn, those werewolves are fucking like 10 feet tall, and they're just towering and they're dirty. And it's very reminiscent of The Howling. Whenever Eddie Quist, as he's the werewolf, he pushes that table aside, and you got to like see his legs and his like the his like body like raise up and extend, and you get to see how big this beast actually was. It wasn't just a little fucking guy with hair on his face. No, this is a actual giant wolf rather than fucking Twilight thing where they're on all fours and look like big dogs.
Yeah. So, The Howling is based on a book by Gary Bradner. Yeah. And, I believe Joe Dante found this, I think it was Joe Dante, found this book in like an airport?
No, it's
one of the
actually,
producers?
Yeah, it's the producer, Stephen Lane, I think his name was.
Okay.
He found the book. He picked it up. He tried to find out who had the rights. I believe he found out the rights were already purchased by a guy named Jack Conrad, who was a producer on The Howling. And he had a script he wanted to direct. And it went to, I think this is on the special features too. I'm a big fan of the backstory of The Howling and the books myself, so I kind of know a little bit more. But anyways, he basically it got just disputes, and Dante came in this guy Terry Winkless or something came in, wrote the script, and John Sayles came in, which worked with Corman and Dante in the past. Which John Sayles is a fucking phenomenal screenwriter. He's basically wrote Battle Beyond the Stars and Piranha and one of my favorite 80s monster movies, Alligator. It kind of just went from there. And they, because I believe that Jack Conrad's script was more loyal to the book, and they were kind of like, you know what, kind of fuck the book. Let's kind of just do our own thing. And there's a lot of things that were taken out of the book, because I own, all three and I've read them. And it definitely takes a detour, in a sense. And I think it's better. The movie is a good movie by itself. Mm-hmm. And I know in The Howling 4, it's very reminiscent to the book, because they kind of just redid it. But anyways, that's the kind of the story. I think I'm right. If I'm not, tweet me and tell me I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
So
don't tempt them.
Yeah, I know. Horror fans, right? You motherfucker, you're so stupid. I'm gonna fucking attack you on the internet.
Bring it on, people.
Yeah.
Let's see. One thing I wanted to bring up too when I was rewatching this was the character actors that appear. I mean, Slim Pickens shows up as kind of the deputy or sheriff, and then Dick Miller makes an appearance.
Yeah,
and
as the bookstore guy.
Dick Miller is always awesome in any role. He always brings something special to the role. And the guys over at Junk Food Cinema, their podcast, they actually got to sit down and talk to Dick Miller. So it's
Brian Salisbury and Cargill. Yeah.
Insanely jealous of those guys, but he's in this not for very long, but he plays almost a very pivotal role, as the book salesman, just out to make a buck, right?
Yeah, well, he's the one that has all the information, kind of, saves the day.
Right.
And also, you're forgetting, a lot of people don't know this, and I tend to forget that the friend that basically helped, I forget his, Chris, I think his name is played by Dennis Dugan, who went on to fucking direct Adam Sandler movies.
Dear God.
Yeah, the guy that plays Chris, like basically one of the other lead characters that's into the whole movie, it's Dennis Dugan, and he went on to direct Adam Sandler movies, which, god damn you, Dennis Dugan.
The picture that was once so bright, you sold out.
You're in the fucking Howling, you saved the day, and then you ruined the entire world. I'm sorry, Adam Sandler. I'm sorry. You're not listening to us anyway, so I can really give a shit.
To the fans that have watched any recent Adam Sandler film and not to Adam Sandler himself. As he cashes his multi-million-dollar paychecks, it's the fans that are suffering. Let's keep it real.
Yeah.
Well,
what do you guys think, rewatching this recently, how do you guys think the performances held up? Dee Wallace, I think is
she's
fantastic.
She's phenomenal. Yeah.
Who
I
plays...
think it's like still a really good I think so. What I always find is that a lot of the movies from the 70s and 80s, overacting was the normal. If that makes sense, where everything
there's a good deal of that, yeah.
Like it was the normal then. So when I look at movies, I can't really compare them to today's standards because they're all. I kind of don't notice. It's not really a bad thing unless somebody's acting not at all or more like they would be in today's day and age. At which point it throws it all off, you know. But I felt like in The Howling, they're all sort of overacting at the same level. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think it works. It works on this one in particular, I think, because of it's very, very sexual. And I think, like Dee Wallace, when she freaks out in the movie, like she legitimately kind of loses it. And yeah, I could see a little bit of the overacting in that, but in a sense, it does really, really work for this film because, reading the book and kind of knowing. Because in the book, she is actually raped, and she goes and then she goes off to this. They call it the colony in the movie. I forget what they call it. I think it's the Rocky guy's name, Ivan Drago. It's called Drago, the place that they go to. And that's when they find out that the fucking thing is full of werewolves. In this, it's like Eddie Quist is a werewolf. They go there, and it's a bunch of colony of werewolves that know Eddie Quist. And it's kind of like, and it almost seems like Dee Wallace Stone is actually portraying that role as the original book as being traumatized and, already dealt with so much goddamn stress. Because immediately, as soon as she's in there, from the time that she's in the telephone booth until she goes into the porno shop, you just see that she's super fucking uncomfortable. And I think that really works with that. But yeah.
Absolutely. And not having read the book, I didn't know that, but I still thought that it worked really well, just even with like the movie as it is, where, I believed that you could be that traumatized from nearly being attacked, trying to help a perpetrator and having him shot in front of you.
Yeah.
That felt genuine to me.
Yeah. Let's see, who else? Who plays her husband? Is her husband or boyfriend, whoever? Mr. Mustache.
Well, it's her husband, and it was her husband in real life.
Right.
Yeah.
I also mentioned, before I forgot to you, that woman does not age. I just saw her months back. She looks just like she did in The Howling. I swear to God.
Yeah, just her hair's shorter, but she looks exactly. I mean, she was in Lords of Salem, and I'm like, oh, it's E.T.'s mom still, and it's like, she's just, she's a gorgeous woman, and still is. But Sean, what were you going to say?
What's her husband's name? Man? Is that
Christopher Stone or something?
Stone. I jotted down a note on here. I was like, Tom Atkins should have been in this. Because he's a very Tom Atkins role.
Yeah. It's funny that because I think the story behind it is she got her husband the role in that movie. But yeah, it's that would be a Tom Atkins character for sure.
Totally.
Because once he starts getting into that with that woman and that kind of like cult thing, and they end up fucking and turning into werewolves. That's so Tom Atkins, because it reminds me of Halloween 3. Because he picks up that girl, and then he fucks her that night, and it's like fucking Tom Atkins, such a goddamn pimp, and yeah, that would totally be a Tom Atkins role.
Yeah.
He could seduce any woman on screen.
Totally. Well, I think Elizabeth Brooks seduced him. Her character.
No, the mustache did it.
The mustache, okay.
Put her in France to
seduce him. I have to say. Yeah. Yeah, did you guys notice the Roger Corman cameo?
Oh, yes. Yeah, the phone booth. Yeah, the phone booth guy.
I don't know if you caught that because we were talking about Roger Corman earlier. Again, not intentional, just happened to be talking about Corman.
Okay. Yeah, he turned around and I go, hey, that's Roger Corman.
Yeah. I love it when movies do that, by the way. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. I love it too.
And like something for the fans, you know?
Yeah, it's fun seeing it later on because when I was little, of course, I didn't know who the fuck Roger Corman was. I didn't know who Dick Miller was. I didn't know who Joe Dante was. But seeing those movies when I was little and then growing up with him and then making the discovery of that, because I remember just being little and having, you know, my small little collection of VHS tapes lined up. And I was like, oh man, I like all these 3 zombie movies. And I look and I'm like, George A. Romero. Oh my God, he directed all these movies. And I got super fucking excited because there was no IMDb. There was no internet for me to find this out.
Before IMDb? No.
And it's like, oh my God, like I like all these movies. The same guy did them. And I just, you know, freaked out. And my mom's like, you need to calm down. Go clean your room or something. And I'm like, yeah, but I figured this out all by myself. I was so excited. You know, and then later on watching movies and then saying, oh, he was in that. And, you know, that guy's in that movie and then you just kind of, and then of course the internet hit and then, you know, everybody knows it. But finding that shit out for yourself, was an experience when I was little.
It's great too, 'cause it just adds so many layers. I think that I hope that more directors continue to do it. I think that it's sort of fallen by the wayside a little bit more with the current generation of filmmakers. That being said, for me, it's something that just sort of makes the film enjoyable on so many different levels, you know?
Yeah, and that's why Your Next is really fun, because all those guys are buds. We got Ty West playing, you know, some film school guy. We have Simon Barrett as one of the killers, you know. Joe Swanberg's in it, and Amy, I forget her name. Oh shit. But anyways, it's like all these directors are together to make this movie, and it's very fun for a certain audience. I mean, and it doesn't ruin things for people that don't know either.
No, exactly. But as long as they can act, if you give them lines, you're good.
Yeah. Yeah, it just gives us fans just a little more incentive, and it makes it cool. It's simply what it does.
Yes.
Thank you, Sean, for your contribution to that conversation.
One thing I wanted to bring up too, when I was watching, they have the sex scene in the woods, and
yes,
since this is the 80s, there's no CG or anything, but they did use cell animation near the end, if you notice, to show the transformation happen kind of in the distance. All of a sudden it turns into like cartoon. Did you guys notice that?
I did notice that, and I thought it was a weird choice. I thought it's never felt right to me. But the fact that it was kind of randomly in there. But then when I sort of transitioned into being a filmmaker, I was like, oh, you did that because there's no other way to do it cheaply and affordably. And you probably, I don't know this to be fact, I assume that they probably did is they probably were editing their movie together and were like, oh shit, we didn't cut a transition scene here.
I think they ran out of money.
Oh, they definitely ran out of money. That's why the climactic scene at the end is shot in close-up, because they couldn't afford a set. So they run out of money.
Oh yeah, they filmed like in an office or something, right?
Yeah,
so.
I figure that's why it's done that way. But that being said, it wouldn't prevent me from enjoying the movie, and it didn't take me out of the plot or anything.
No, it's just a little like, did I just see that? You know? But they don't dwell on it. They kind of just, okay, we need this. Here it is. Moving on.
Yeah, and that, by the way, that ending, we won't spoil it for people who haven't seen The Howling, but that ending really fucking still even shocks me. Like, I forget that it's going to happen. Yeah. You know? And I'm like, oh, okay, everything's cool. And then it starts, and I'm like, fuck, no, it's not. God damn it.
That's actually one of my favorite parts about the movie is the ending.
Yeah, it's great.
And that's why I think everybody who's just a fan of cinema should see this film, because the ending is so atypical and very un-Hollywood, and I really love that. You know, I think it's so appropriate. I'm a sucker for the story. You know, I always think that stories should be king. The sad reality of the matter is, whenever you've got 100 hands in the pot and studios barking down your door and $1 million at stake, which don't quote me, but I believe this was $1 million budget in 1981. It's hard to make a movie that's true to the story. That's not, well, you have to cast this person because of this reason. This character can't do this because of this. So the sex scene being as sort of raw as it was, you know, the ending, there's so much about this film that I feel was made by someone who wanted to tell this tale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you know.
And it feels more, and it doesn't feel like a horror film for a long time.
No, it doesn't.
And I really like that. This is a weird comparison, but I compare this a lot to the film Cobra with Stallone. I know that sounds weird, but Cobra sells itself as an action movie, but it's a fucking slasher in a way. And Cobra doesn't feel like an action movie. It feels like a horror film half the time. And this doesn't feel like a horror film. It feels like it feels like a fucking porno half the time. It's very sleazy, for certain parts. It's very dirty. And it's not until we actually see the werewolves that we're reminded that this is a horror film. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like this slasher in a way with Eddie Quist, but it's very sexualized, and I really love that about this movie.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get a good look at the werewolves until about an hour in, and then by that time you have a half hour left in the flick.
And I don't know if that was, I'd like to know if that was for budgetary reasons or if they really wanted it. And I think they did tell a story. And I think, I like to think of that they were just telling a story and setting up characters, because we actually do care about everybody. Because all her friends, aside from her husband, and the werewolves, there's no assholes. Like, we kind of want to know everybody's story. And the four main people, Dee Wallace, her husband, and then her two friends, which is Chris and the other girl, we get stories on them. There is even a little side note to where Dennis Dugan and that I forget the female's name. They go to Eddie Quist's apartment and see the drawings and everything, and we get a movie just with them, and then it goes back. And so we attach to those characters a little bit, and we don't get that in movies today. Mm-hmm. We get our lead, and we focus on the lead, and then that's it, and then everybody else is expendable. These characters aren't expendable, and there's turning points for these characters too. Once shit goes down, we're like, oh my god, I really don't know who's going to live. And who you think's going to live and what happens is totally different from what Hollywood, like Jessica said, what Hollywood standards were. Yeah. And it really, really does something different. And that's why it's so special.
Yeah. I mean, there's a level of sophistication, I think, that this, as a werewolf movie, has, that, these other werewolf movies that came after it, that tried to cash in on just the monster, don't have, and just,
yeah.
I don't know, everything just seems, intentional and necessary to the plot. And I appreciated that. I mean, this movie's only an hour and a half, but it doesn't feel like just some cheap 80s horror flick. Normally you see a movie that's 90 minutes. It's a action flick or a horror movie. Like, this movie feels like if a director handled it today, it would be 2.5 hours probably, with just bloated bullshit thrown in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, and then it would have focused on one or two people rather than the whole entire cast. Yeah. And this movie is kind of a character piece on multiple people. Yeah. And even Eddie Quist, we get a lot with him, which played by Robert Picardo, which is the weirdest thing. I didn't realize that until years later. And I'm like, holy shit, Picardo is the fucking serial killer. Yeah. And if people know who he is without makeup, you would not think this guy is a villain. He's very sinister looking. He can be sinister. There's Sean, we can link this in the notes. Okay. And if anybody hasn't seen it, Jessica and Sean, there is a short film where he plays the lead. It's called The Candidate, and it is fucking phenomenal.
It's directed by Marcus Dunstan?
Yes.
Love it.
Well, actually, no. It's written by Marcus. I believe somebody else directed it. Yeah, but
we're thinking the same one. Yeah, it's exceptional.
Yeah, it's so fucking good. And every line of dialogue that man says in that movie just punches you right in the face. Every line is delivered exceptionally well, and that ending story is just fucking phenomenal. So yeah, if you haven't seen The Candidate short film, which is written by Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan, the guys behind The Collector and shit like that, they wrote this short film, and I forget who directed it. We'll put that in the notes. I'm sorry, I forget who directed it. Problem. But it's phenomenal, and Picardo nails it. So, and he also nails Eddie Quist.
Well, let's go ahead, and we're running out of time here. Let's go ahead and kind of dive into.
Correct. You need like a whip sound. Can you can you put that in?
Yes.
To make us like whenever Sean speaks, it's like crack.
Yeah, I know, huh? I don't have shit to say, but I'll get everyone back on track.
It's okay. You do well, Sean.
Let's talk about the transfer. I was watching this last night, and the transfer looks pretty great. I mean, it's what we can expect from Scream Factory. They're not going to just throw some bullshit transfer and try to sell something, and like Echo Bridge does. Those bastards.
Who's Echo Bridge?
Echo Bridge. They bought all the Miramax flicks.
I've never heard of them.
And they've been giving shitty DVD or Blu-ray releases.
Oh.
Don't you hate that? But that's why I always Google anytime you're going to buy a classic, you have to Google it and make sure that you're not buying a crappy version of it, because that's the reality of the matter. And even, it's so funny, because I spoke with Joe Dante prior to the screening at length, because I wrongly assumed, seeing it, because we watched the movie at the New Beverly, which is a theater in Hollywood, which is known for playing actual film, which is really rare nowadays. So I assumed we'd be watching a film copy, and I was speaking to him about it, and he said, no, there's actually no good film version of The Howling left. Because it's been, it's an 81 film. It's been passed around to so many distributors that all the good copies have long since been destroyed or lost, that they don't actually have a good quality film copy to screen. So they actually played it off of a Blu-ray. So thankfully it looked really good.
The only thing I noticed, and I kind of get weird with some things, there's a transition scene where they kind of pan across the all the in the TV newsroom, up in the editing booth or wherever, the control room, they pan across, and there's some like kind of weird digital jaggies that go across the screen real quick. But that's not Scream Factory's fault, but I did notice. My eyes did notice.
Were you okay when you saw that? Did you like pass out or?
No,
maybe you had a panic attack.
I was fine, but I paused and rewinded to make sure I wasn't seeing things. And I was surprised nobody, because people get weird about film transfers, and I'm surprised there was no call for like a recall and a redo and all this stuff. You
might have been when he really.
I didn't notice it.
I didn't notice it either.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my copy.
Watched it maybe about 3 times. I don't remember. I don't remember anything like that.
Damn it. Well, it must be me. I don't know. But overall, I thought it looked fantastic. The sound, it sounded great. So that's going to be kind of the song and dance here with these releases, unless Scream Factory drops the ball and releases something, totally crappy. But I have no complaints there. The special features, this is a collector's edition, so it's packed.
It's mostly pulled though. A lot of that stuff's pulled from MGM release, which was a shitty transfer of a DVD anyway.
There's 3 commentaries. I think. Oof. No, that's the wrong one. I'm thinking of another movie. No, there's not 3. My bad. There's 1 commentary. But there's an interview with Stephen Lane.
You fucked up, Sean. Oh my god.
Oh no.
So many listeners lost.
Another movie that we're going to be talking about soon has 3 commentaries, and I was watching them both last night, so I'm all sideways.
Better take better notes next time.
There you go.
But the commentary's great. It's Joe Dante and Dee Wallace and Robert Picardo. So
nice.
I think that's probably pulled from the DVD, but it's a really fun commentary.
Yeah, I haven't listened, but it sounds with those 3 people in one room, that sounds like a very fun group of friends.
Yeah,
and then that's what counts, is that if these people remain friends, and you can kind of tell with filmmakers if they've kept in touch because of when like a resurgence when maybe the film goes around in festivals again, or like Jessica said, it played at New Beverly and everybody the people attend. And that's one thing I always liked with like Carpenter and Kurt Russell. Every commentary with them in the room is better than the movie half the time, which I love the movie, of course. That's not down with the movie. But those 2 guys together, they're the best buds. And those commentaries are delightful. So I imagine with Joe Dante and Robert Picardo and Dee Wallace, it'd be pretty fun.
Yeah.
You know what I've decided, though, for all of my movies go forward, if I direct it and if I produce, I'm going to try for this as well. I think all of the films today should have a DVD commentary where the cast and crew or some members from it do a drinking game while playing it. Because all horror films can have a drinking game connected to it.
Yes, they can.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's only fair if the fans are going to do it, that the people behind the film do it for all to watch.
Definitely.
I
I'm all
agree.
for that.
And that's the only thing to me that makes some commentary better. I'm like, I bet you if they had a couple shots, it'd be even more entertaining.
Yeah, because I imagine that's a little awkward too, be like, have people get you together and say, hey, sit in this room and you're going to talk about your work.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, I fucking worked 3 years on this movie. Like, and now I'm going to sit here and, I can see it being a little awkward. Sometimes it flows better, especially if I have like a moderator or anything. But, yeah.
No, that's good. I mean, Joe Dante kind of acts as the moderator. I forgot to mention Christopher Stone is in this commentary as well. So
it's an old commentary because he passed.
Yeah.
Like in the 90s, right?
Yeah, I think in 97.
Like yeah.
Let's see, moving along here. There's a documentary, Unleashing the Beast, and then there's another kind of making of a monster, and look at the film's locations. In one of the documentaries I was starting to watch, let's see here, Rob Bottin, is that his name, Rob Bottin?
I think they say Bottin.
Rob Bottin.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong.
Well, who knows? One of us is. But in his interview, this is back from the 80s, and he looks like a werewolf. The dude is furry.
Oh yeah, he always looks like that. It's so funny.
So it's funny to have him talking about werewolves, and yeah.
Yeah, he's a genius, man. Because he did The Thing, and the special effects in The Thing are just, still one of the best ever in any film, even today.
Yeah, it's great. So I highly recommend this collector's edition, and it was when it first was released. I pre-ordered this right away. So if you don't own it yet, what are you doing? Pick it up.
And then maybe they'll release the sequel with Sybil Danning, which I'm a big fan of The Howling 2, which I think I'm the only one. But I'm a big fan of The Howling 2.
I'm a big fan of the marsupials myself.
Ooh, that was the Australian one.
I watched it late one night and I don't remember half of it.
That is batshit crazy. It's funny that I think the executive producer of that we spoke about earlier, I forget his name again. But yeah, he was behind every film almost. Yeah. I think all but one. But there's fucking like 8 sequels to The Howling now.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for our discussion of The Howling. Like I said, we're running out of time, but I want to give Jessica some time here to let us know, Jessica, what are you up to these days? You have like a list of things marked in red on IMDb. So,
which is a good. Don't for those listeners who are like red. Oh no.
No, as in not released yet. So what are some of the things you can let us know about that are kind of on the horizon? I know that you're still looking for distribution for Truth or Dare, but it's hitting a lot of festivals.
Yeah, we're doing festivals, so definitely like the page or the Twitter page for Truth or Dare, Jessica Cameron's Truth or Dare, to stay up to date with all of that. We have many film screenings lined up. We're going to be doing DeKalb, Illinois, one of the Chicago festivals up there. We'll also be screening at the Immersed in Ink Festival in Chicago. I believe it's the weekend of the April 18th. So we're doing it that Saturday. And then a bunch of we're screening Myrtle Beach, we're screening Buffalo, and a bunch of other cool ones. Utero right now is in post-production, which is a film that I produced and I also star in. It's a fun, graphic little tale about a woman who is pregnant and agoraphobic, and she believes that her child is in fact a monster. So it's this really cool kind of Jacob's Ladder dealio.
I love those movies.
Yeah, where you don't know, is she going insane or is she really pregnant with a monster? What's going on? And then we've got a bunch of stuff right now that's in post-production that we're waiting. So hopefully Run Like Hell will get out any day now, fingers crossed. Legend of the Grass Man, and a bunch more. The tour, we just shot up in England, which was a great time with Truth or Dare star Heather Dorff. And then we're getting ready to go into pre-production on a couple more projects. So I'm really blessed, and the fans have been so supportive and encouraging for more. So we're going to give it to them.
Cool. Where can people kind of keep in touch with everything that you're doing? Do you have a website, or should it be
I do.
Twitter?
Well, I'm all over social media, as you guys have commented, and other people know this to be fact as well. So you can find everything on my website at jessicacameron.com, or you can also just go directly to my Facebook pages, which is under my name, Jessica Cameron, and Twitter, Jessica Cameron _. We have my film pages, which are also on Facebook and Twitter. It's Small Town Girl Productions. That's my company, because that's what I am at heart. And yeah, just, like us, stay in tune, touch base, let us know, if you're going to be at a screening or if you want us to screen somewhere. We've been really good about trying to keep the fans happy. So, if you want us to screen somewhere and we don't have it on our list, let us know. I can't promise you that we can get a screening at your preferred festival, but I can promise you that we will try.
Cool.
Boom.
You can find us at thescreamcast.com. Jessica, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us. We really appreciate it.
This was so fun.
Cool. I'm glad you had fun. So far, we haven't scared off anyone yet, so that's a bonus.
No.
That we know of.
Right, yeah.
And it seems that we're scaring off the males, but we're keeping the girls, which is the odd thing.
All that really matters.
But yes, that's what I really care about.
That's
so, Travis Stevens and Morgan Peter Brown, Brian Sauer, you can go fuck yourselves. Just kidding.
Wow.
Wow. I promise this.
You can follow us on Twitter, Scream_cast, and you can follow Brad if you want to.
Yeah, I just bitch a lot about horror films, and I'm a grumpy old man sometimes, so pardon me if I have a small rant.
Quite all right.
I won't judge.
Yeah.
You can find some of my writing over at popsyndicate.com, and you can find Brad's extensive writing over at popshifter.com. That's
which it's
nice.
It's getting bigger. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
it's getting bigger. And I'm hoping to bring some, because I'm getting tired of reading the same goddamn reviews and writing the same goddamn thing. So I'm trying something new. So by the time this posts, they're all be posted, and we'll decide if I'm going to continue what I'm doing. So we'll see.
Cool. And with that said, we have quite a handful of shows, on deck. So
yeah,
keep in contact with us. If you have anything to say to us, you can email us over at thescreamcast.com. Just click contact, drop us a line via that route. We'd love to hear from you. And otherwise, all of you have a great week. Talk to you next time.
Oh, and don't wait, Sean.
What?
You can't forget Nerdly.
Oh shit!
See it? God damn!
I love Nerdly.
Now I got to edit. And we'd like to thank nerdly.co.uk for hosting us on their website. They have a lot of great articles and things as well over there. Really great site. I love how it's laid out. And
also they picked us up, which is
shout
very,
out to
very
Phil
nice.
Leach, who is awesome, who works over there, and I can't wait to see you in London when I visit next.
Nice. So definitely drop them a line and read their stuff. So they're a great site. All right. That's going to do it for us here at the Screamcast. All of you have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Oh, don't tell me you're leaving. The party's just begun.